Okay, so as you saw in the previous lesson, when it comes to mirroring bones to the right side of your rig, you simply have to go through a sequence of steps. Now keep in mind that you can mirror bones to the right or the left side of your rig. So what we're going to be doing in these lessons is taking a look at some important concepts when working with bones inside the 3D view. This is because when you start to move further along in this series, developing your rig, you want to make sure that you fully understand what the bones are doing. Now, the other thing that we're going to do is look at a special function in Blender that we can use to automatically mirror the bones to the right or the left side. This means that when we use this function, it's going to do all the steps for us automatically when mirroring bones, all the way down to actually naming the bones correctly that have been mirrored with the .r and the .l suffix, so they work with the x-axis mirror. So the first thing that you want to do is go under File and then do Save As and save this as Bone Concepts. We'll pick up where we left off by opening this file a little later. Now, what you want to do now is make sure that the armature is selected and you have selected edit mode for the armature. I'm going to change this back to median point over here. Now go ahead and zoom in, shift middle mouse button and place the figure like this. Go ahead and now save this file. Okay, so the first thing that we want to look at is what happens when you are extruding bones. So go ahead and select this bone first. Notice that when you pick a bone, Blender will show you the name of the bone in the 3D viewport over here. You can see the name of the bone under the items panel, and of course you can see the name of the bone on the bones tab. Now you know that when you are selecting bones, you can select them in 3 different points. So if we click on the tail, you'll notice that it still shows the same exact name, which is correct. Now when we select the head, we will have to click this a few times because the head of this bone is in the exact same position as the hips bone. So click on it over here and then watch for the name for the bone to appear that you're looking for. I'm going to click it again. So this is the bone I want. So you can see that when you click on the tail, the head, or the body, the name of the bone appears in these 3 different locations. So go ahead and now select on this bone. Click on the tail of this bone. Now I want you to press the E key to extrude the bone. Now because we have the x-axis mirror on, this bone is also going to extrude. Now when you are developing your rigs like this, you might be tempted that right after you extrude the bone, you want to name this bone. So if you click over here, you'll see that it's still displaying the name of the bone that we extruded from, even though the tail is selected. So you have to be careful when you're extruding bones and naming bones. So you have to click on the tail again or click on the body and make sure visually that you have selected the correct bone. You can simply look over here to see what's going on. Now go ahead and click on the tail of this bone and press the G key to bring it down over here. Press the shift and middle mouse button, just pan a little to the left. Now we're going to move on to another concept. So when you have the tail selected, and if you press the control key down, and then when you start left clicking, you can start to add additional bones. Now notice that when you use this technique, if you go to the bone that you started out with, you can see that it automatically gets its parent, which is this bone right here. So this means that all these bones are connected. The other thing you should notice is that when you click on this bone and open up the transforms, when a bone is being created with this technique, the roll of the bone is always at 0 for every bone. We're going to take a look at what this roll concept means a little later. Now to shift middle mouse button to pan up over here. Go ahead and click on the head of this bound. Now press the control key down and press the left mouse button. You'll see that even though when we clicked on the head of this bone, it can only extrude out from the tail of this bone. So this tells you that when you are selecting the tail of this bone and clicking down the control key and doing the left mouse button, the bones are being extruded. Okay, now to shift middle mouse button to come over here. Now go ahead and make sure that you have the tail of this bone selected. Now I'm going to show you a different way to create the same pattern by using the 3D cursor. Now what's important to understand is if you click the 3D cursor over here and go to the right view, you'll see that the 3D cursor will be placed exactly where it was placed to begin with, meaning that we had done Shift C to place the 3D cursor at the origin of the armature. So if we put the 3D cursor over here and go to the front view and start clicking it like this, go back to the right view, you'll see that the 3D cursor did not move. It stays here. So we're going to do Shift C to place the 3D cursor over here and zoom in. Click 1 to go to the front view and just zoom out a little bit over here, Shift middle mouse button. So this means that if we click on the 3D cursor in a space where there is no 3D model, the 3D cursor will still be at the center plane. Because we have the tail selected, and if we click on F, it's going to create a bone for us over here. So this means that we can use the 3D cursor by clicking the left mouse button, placing it and pressing the F key to keep creating bounds. Now I already have shown you that when we were working on the hands, if you click the 3D cursor on a 3D model, this 3D cursor will simply stick to your model. Okay? Now you can see that if you place the 3D cursor over here and press the F key, now if we for some reason need to place the 3D cursor over here close to this bone, you can't actually click over here because the red arrow and the blue arrow is in your way. So if you click it, you'll see that it will think that you want to go into translate mode. So you have to come in here and turn off the 3D cursor and then just simply click your mouse over here and then press the F key. Then you can go back and turn it back on. Now what's important to understand about using this technique is that when you use the 3D cursor and press the F key to create these bones, it is not extruding your bones. And if you click on this bone, the bone that we started out with, you can see that it has no parent. And actually, if you click on all of these bones, you'll see that they have no parents. They're just individual bones. So that's what the 3D cursor does when you're using the F key. So this means that if we click on the head of this bone and click the 3D cursor over here and press the F key, it's just going to place the bone starting from the head to the 3D cursor. And if we click it, there is no parent. Also notice that when you're using this technique, when we use the 3D cursor, we did not get bones reproduced on the right side. They only reproduce when you're using the control and left mouse button to create the bounds. Go ahead and now save this file. Okay, so now that you've seen how to work with the 3D cursor and pressing the F key, we're going to take a look at this concept in a different way. Press the Shift middle mouse button to pan up over here. So if we click on the tail of this bone and click the left mouse button to bring the 3D cursor here and press the F key and then click on this bone, we can see that there is no parent. And we of course know that it's not going to create a bone on this side. Okay, go ahead and select this bone X and now delete it. Now we're not going to use the 3D cursor, but we're going to use the F key. So now click on the tail of this bone, press the shift key down and click on the head of this bone and press F. It's going to place a bone right over here. Now if you click on this, you'll see that it gets its parent, which is this bone. So this means that it actually did extrude from the tail. Now notice that when you use this technique, it doesn't create the bone over here. Now if you click on this bone and press the G key to move it, you can see that the parent-child relationship is intact. But the tail of this newly created bone did not get attached to the arm bone. I'm going to right click to cancel that. So this means that this bone is still the child of this bone over here. And this bone is still the parent of this bone. And this bone is the child of this bone. And this bone is the child of this bone. So if you want to take this bone and make it the child of this bone, you would have to click on this bone, which is the child first, press the shift key down and go find the parent and do Control P. And here you can choose connected. But as soon as you do that, it's going to bring the bone from the left to the right. So why is it doing this? This is because when we created this bone, we did not get another bone over here. So there is no mirrored concept happening with the dot L and the dot R. So here we're going to do Control Z to push this bone back. Now still having these two bones selected, do Control P and this time choose Keep Offset. When you do this, you can see what's happening. You can see this relationship line going across. So if you click on this bone, you'll see that its parent is bone 11. So to fix this issue, what we would have to do is create a bone over here in the same way. Now look at what's going to happen. If we click on the tail of this bone, press the shift key down and click on the head of this bone and press F, it's going to create a bone which is called bone.012. Okay, so you can see that Blender increments the bone numbers each time you create them. But if we click over here, X, and delete this bone, then click on this bone and simply just click over here and add a .l suffix. Now when we come over here, press the shift key down and click over here and press F to create the bone. Now this bone is called 011, same as this bone, right? So meaning that as soon as you click this bone and change its name, Blender sees that there is no bone 11 anymore. So it just starts again. So this means that we can use that to our advantage by simply clicking over here, doing .R and pressing the enter key. Now when we click on this bone and press the G key, you can see how it's working on the other side. So now to fix this relationship concept, all we have to do is click on the child, press the shift key down, go find the parent, do Control P, and then just to connect it, and it's going to fix the relationship automatically. So now if we click on this bone, press the G key to move, you'll see that everything is working. Press A to deselect, and now go ahead and now save this file. Okay, so now we're going to move on to another concept. So go ahead and press the Control key and middle mouse button just to zoom out a bit. Now, when you want to merge bones that are part of a chain, meaning that they are connected together with parent-child relationships, and they have this checked, you can actually merge bones together. Meaning that if we click on this bone, press the shift key down and click on this one, do Alt M and fire this off, you can see that we merged the bones. It does it on the other side too. Do Control Z to undo this. But if you click on this bone and now uncheck this box, meaning that this bone is now a child of this bone, but it's basically offset. Now if you press the shift key down and click on this one, do Alt M and fire this off, you'll see that it's not going to merge the bones. but it'll definitely do it here. We're going to Control Z that. Now the reason it worked here is because when you clicked on this bone and when you uncheck it, even though that they are mirrored and you have this feature on, if you click over here, it's not going to do it here. So you have to do this step manually when you're working, when you're changing things in the bone tab. Okay, so if you click on this bone and just zoom in a little bit, X and go ahead and delete this bone. That's basically what's going on. This bone is right now offset from this bone. So if you click on connected, click on this bone, press the shift key down this one, do Alt M. Now fire this up, you'll see that it will merge. Control Z to undo this. Or actually, let's go ahead and just reload the file since we already saved it. Okay, so now if we click on this bone, X and delete it, and click on this bone and actually remove its parent. Now if we click on this bone, press the shift key down and click on this one, do Alt M and fire this up, you can see that it still works. Okay, so I'm going to Control Z that. So the only time it does not work is that if the bone is in the middle of a chain and it has this unchecked, meaning that the bone is offset, it's not going to merge the bones. Go ahead and just reload the file. Okay, so now what I want to show you is that if you click on this bone and do Alt P, you can actually clear the parent. So if we click this, you can see that if you click on this bone, it no longer has a parent. Press the G key, but it still has a child attached to it. So if you right click to cancel this, click on the child first, press the shift key down, click on its parent, do Control P, then do connected over here. Now if you click on this bone and if you want to completely sever all the connections, you can just press the Y key and it will basically split this bone. So if you press the G key, you can see that we've completely severed it. But it only works when you have the bone selected. You can see that it did not work on the right side. So meaning that you have to click on this and press the Y key to make it behave the same way. Right click to cancel this. You shift middle mouse button to pan this up over here. Now if you click on this bone and press the shift key down in this one, now if you press the Y key, you can see that it's going to sever the connection from here and it's going to sever the connection from here. If you press the G key, you can see that we can split multiple bones like this. Right click to cancel the movement. So I'm just going to go ahead and now reload that file up again. Now you've already seen that when we click on a bone, when we were working on the hand, we can do Alt F to flip the bone. Notice that as soon as you do that, it loses its parent. So if we click on this bone, which has a parent, and do Alt F, when we click on this bone and press the G key, it's simply just separated. It loses its parent. I'm going to go ahead and now reload that file up again. Let's do this by clicking on this bone, pressing the shift key, this one and this one. Now do Alt F. So now if we click on this bone, you can see that its parent is right now bone 11, so it kept that intact. And if you click on this one, it lost its parent. So the bones that you select and when you do Alt F will still keep their connections, okay? But they will sever the connections from basically this end and this end. Okay, so here let's go ahead and just reload this file, and we'll continue on in the next lesson where we will talk about some additional things. Thank you.